Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Lynn, and I am going to make a squash book. I have never heard of this style of mini album until recently, even though it has been around for a while. I just don't know where I've been that I've just never seen it before, but it's really, really fun, super, super easy. And I think these squash books would be really, really great for little brag books. And today I'll be using the Graphic 45 Warm Wishes collection. I'll be pulling some papers from the patterns and solids, but mainly I'll be using the for mats and layers, I'll be using the 8x8 paper pad because I've actually designed this size squash book so that it makes efficient cuts out of the 8x8. So I will be creating my page bases from the patterns and solids, and I'm going to start off by cutting 3 sheets to 8.5 by 8.5. I chose this size in case you want to use solid color cardstock and what you have available to you is US letter size cardstock. So it's easy for you to get 8.5 by 8.5 out of one sheet. And the nice thing about the squash book is that you can actually add as many sheets as you'd like to just continue expanding your book. But all you need to do for each of these is from the back, I am scoring at 4.25, and then turning it 90 degrees and scoring at 4.25. So basically you are gonna score this so that you have 4 equal kind of quadrants. And I'm scoring all 3 sheets the same way, even though my intention is I'm going to have the green as my first panel or card base, and then the red, and then green, so that they are alternating. And I'll discover later that I should have reversed my scoring for this second page here. But your next score line will be along the diagonal. So for me, the easiest way to do that is just line up the 2 corners, diagonal corners, and then I like to use the cutting line on my scoreboard to score a straight line, because I feel like that's the easiest way for me to tell that I have the 2 points of the corners lined up in the same score track. So then all you need to do is fold. And if you noticed, I scored the first 2 lines from the back side because I want this more solid green to show. And I scored the diagonal line from the front. And the reason for that is because you generally want to fold your score lines as mountain folds. Because what you're doing when you score a line is you're stretching the paper fibers on that side. And so when you've stretched that, as you fold and that sort of bends and curves around that fold, you get a cleaner fold that's less likely to tear or crack your cardstock. So I have done that the same way for all 3 of my panels here, and these will become my sort of mini album pages. And since this is the first time I'm putting one together, I was still trying to figure out how it all works. I watched one tutorial, felt like I had the gist of it, and as I came to this part, I realized, how does that work again? Because there's a little bit of magic in how this all folds down, because we start with these panels that are 8.5 by 8.5, but this album will actually fold down to just this little square section here that's 4.25 by 4.25, and that's all thanks to those diagonal folds that we put in. And since I hadn't yet figured out in my head how that's all gonna magically work, I decided to go ahead and put down some really strong score tape along the edges, because one thing I was sure of is that that is where these pages will get glued to each other. And so your album will look like this when it's lined up. But here's where I've tried to figure out how this fold works. And that's when I realized that I actually need to reverse my folds on this layer. And so I'm just going to rescore those lines so that I can stretch that cardstock again, but this time in the correct uh, side. And that way everything can fold down. So basically, if you were to add more pages to this, you just want to keep that pattern going where every other page base is scored, like all the even pages are scored one way and all the odd pages are scored the opposite way, kind of as you see here. So you can see the green pages are kind of a little bit folded upwards, and the red page is folded downwards. And that's how these pages can alternate and then all fold in on each other so that you get this really compact little mini album. It's really, really fantastic, super fun. And that's why I was mentioning that this could be a really fun brag book, because it does fold down nice and small, so very, very easy to carry around. So then to attach this, I just squiggled on a little bit of liquid adhesive. That's going to give it a nice permanent bond. But the dry adhesive I have along the four corners will prevent any lifting along the edges, but also it's going to be that instant grab so that I can just continue to work on this without having to worry that it might shift on me. And as I glue down this layer, when I position the red piece of cardstock here into the green one, I'm being careful not to cross over the fold line of that green cardstock. And in fact, I'm leaving a fly's eyelash distance away from that score line. That way, there's a lot of plenty of room for the green card to actually fold in to that panel there. And so that might result in your pages being a little bit offset from one another, but I think ultimately it's all gonna fold down more neatly. And so it's worth it, that little bit of compromise where you might see it be a little bit offset. To cut your mats and layers, I've just chosen some beautiful papers from the 8x8 paper pad, and I'm cutting 4-inch squares. So each of our squares on our page base is 4¼ inches. So this will leave a little bit of a thin border all the way around so that you can see some of that beautiful pattern paper come through. And for the triangle sections, I just cut my 4x4 squares in half along that diagonal edge. So super easy, and you can see why this is such an efficient cut for your 8x8 papers, because you can just trim off half, or you can use a full sheet if you want. I wanted a little bit more variety, so I've picked out a few different patterns, and so I have just a bunch of half sheets left over, but that gives you no waste, basically, using your 8x8 papers. And so I'll go ahead and pick out a couple of different patterns here. And here you can see these are my mats and layers, and you just need to cut, squares, and then for the triangle sections, cut those in half along the diagonal. So then I did a nice little dry fit of where I want all of these patterns to go, and I am going to use some Kalal all-purpose glue to adhere these down, partly because I feel like it's a little bit I need that wiggle room to move these panels around so that I can really try to get them lined up nice and evenly, especially the triangle pieces, because I want to make sure that everything's nice and tidy. And the Kalal all-purpose glue is really great for that because it takes a while to dry. So you got a lot of time to move it around. Even after burnishing the cardstock, I can still nudge my pattern paper a little bit. So if you feel like you need that time to position things, this is a great glue for that. The other thing with the Kalal all-purpose glue is if you were to use thin papers that weren't, from Graphic 45, then the Kalal all-purpose glue is really great because it's solvent-based. And because it's not water-based, it actually doesn't soak into your papers and create potential warping. So if you do need to use thin papers because they are the perfect papers for your project, then this is the glue that I recommend, because any PVA glue, even the best PVA glue, is still water-based and will still soak into your papers. It may not necessarily create any warping, but there will always be a little bit of that potential. So if you want to avoid that entirely, then you can use a solvent-based glue. So I found a couple of die sets from Graphic 45 that I feel like would create some great pockets for this little squash book. So this tag it's a tag pocket and butterflies die set, and the pocket is the perfect size. You'll see in a moment when I put this into my album. It's just the perfect fit. And it also comes with an insert that I've die cut out of a different pattern paper, and that could be a great place for additional photo mats, for some journaling. The pocket's just super cute. You can load it up with tags, ephemera, whatever you want, and I have made 2 of those. Then out of the Policy and decorative dies, I took that one corner die and cut out 4 pairs of corners, and I'll use those as photo corners for the square sections of my squash book. And that's where I'm going to place sort of larger photos. You just need to trim down your photos to maybe 3¼ inch square. And if you notice these triangle sections here, some of them will actually fold backwards, meaning you can actually attach larger items like this pocket, and that fold won't actually bend this pocket. It'll just hang right off and then fold backwards into itself. And so that's a great opportunity to use larger embellishment pieces or things like this, like the pocket. You just have to be careful when you are attaching this that you only apply glue to the portion that you want it to stick down, and the other half where it hangs off of that triangle should be free and clear of adhesive. That way that triangular panel can still fold down. So you can see I've only put glue on half of my pocket there. And then I'll go ahead and burnish that down. So even though these triangle sections seem like they are a little bit small, a little bit awkward to decorate, maybe not big enough for a photo, they actually can be, because of how it's folded down. You can actually put larger items, including photos, if you wanted. So definitely take advantage of that fact, and don't feel like you need to be confined to just the triangle section. So then I've pulled out the ephemera pack from Warm Wishes just to see what else I can use to decorate. And I love the clock pieces. So I found a circle die out of my stash, and I've just die cut out of some black cardstock, a circle that was just large enough to fill that center. And that way I have a nice solid piece that I can glue down. And I'm going to do the same thing where I am going to just attach it to one of the triangle sections. And I wanted to make sure that because I have two things hanging off the edge here, that they don't collide or crash into each other as you try to open and close the album. And so I'm doing a little bit of a dry run just to make sure that this all will still work. I don't want to permanently glue something down that I might have to tear out later. So if you're ever unsure, just use a little bit of low-tack tape and test it before you use your permanent adhesive. And so I'll just decorate the clock a little bit with some of the other ephemera pieces, and super, super fun. So you can always, even though it's beautiful on its own, you can always dress up these ephemera pieces and collage them together a little bit to create something different and unique. And that clock face was the perfect size. It really fits in there just right. And I love this panel as well. It's also a nice additional sentiment to add to this panel here. The two triangle sections in the center, because they fold sort of inwards, you won't be able to do the same trick of hanging something off the edge, because it is going to cross over a score line that's going to fold in. And so really the two the sections that you can take advantage of that is basically your odd pages. If you were to continue extending this, every odd page you'll be able to fit larger elements, just like I've done here. But I rather like how everything kind of looks. I think for the middle, it is nice to just have it be just beautiful pattern paper. And you saw I had just a temporary photo mat that I wanted to make sure I could slip into the photo corners. And look at this. Look how small this little squash book is. But then when you expand it, it just has all of this beautiful space to decorate and add your photos. And as a brag book, I think it's nice to have the photo corners because you can actually swap out photos as well. So each Christmas, maybe you can put in your favorite Christmas photos and carry it around with you. So then the last part of this is to create some the covers to this squash book. So I've die cut out of just some heavyweight black cardstock. This is 110 pound. This square piece is 4.5 by 4.5, so just a bit larger than our page bases. And then I measured out a section of ribbon from Graphic 45. That's going to be my closure. And so I just wanted to make sure that I could wrap it around the entire squash book and also tie a bow. So now I'll go ahead and attach that to one of my black pieces of cardstock here. I'm going to add a little bit of white cardstock just to even out this layer, because the ribbon is really nice quality ribbon, a little bit thick, and I want to make sure when I attach my pattern paper on top of this that it is nice and flush, nice and even. And so my pattern paper I've cut to 4 3/8 of an inch. by 4 3/8 of an inch. So you'll see just a smidge of that black cardstock coming through as a bit of a border. And the only thing you need to do is just glue that to your very last page of your squash book. And I did the exact same for the front cover. So my black cardstock is 4.5 by 4.5. My pattern paper is cut to 4 3/8 by 4 3/8. And the front cover is even easier because you don't need to attach the ribbon to it. And then all you do is on the very top of your squash book, or the front of your squash book, you just need to glue your cover piece to this. And I like to put double-sided strong score tape along all 4 edges just to make sure I don't get any lifting at the edge, but then a little squiggle of liquid adhesive in the center will make this nice and permanent. And also be sure to double check that you, if you have directional papers like I do, that you are attaching it the correct side up, because with a square album it's not always obvious. And so after a quick burnish, then my covers are complete and you have a nice ribbon closure, super compact, but really fun and impressive when you open this tiny little squash book up, and it expands to reveal so much more on the inside. So I'll open this up and you can see how fun this is when it all expands out. And as I mentioned, you can just continue to add more pages to this if you wanted more photos and more areas to decorate. So really fun. I can't wait to fill this album and give it away as a gift this holiday. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. And of course, we would love for you to also subscribe to the Graphic 45 channel if you haven't already. If you're already a subscriber, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.